I don't know how many children in our country look forward to waking up and going to school. And that is not okay. The number one factor that influences learning is the teacher. So, play is really serious work, thinking, cognition which is laying the foundations for executive skills. It's not just sweet. There's a serious process policy level. The government should not have these big schools have 3-year-olds, because 3-year-olds should be in a home kind of a play environment, smaller numbers.
Parents are now in a hurry to push the kids out because they want to get back to their work, or, I want my life back. You should have thought of that before having kids if you want your life back. And I kept telling my wife, IIT grads don't know what to say about themselves.
About who you are. That he said, this is your premier institution and these people don't even know who they are. There's something wrong.
Hi, welcome to Voices in My Head once again. And today I have Sonya Philip with me, who I'm very excited to speak to. She's agreed to come on the podcast despite her busy schedule. So I want to straight away go into introducing Sonya. We're shooting today at Learning Matters Foundation, which is her beautiful school for preschoolers. She is an educator. She's extremely experienced. She's got 2 postgraduate degrees in education from the US, including one in special education, which I'm going to quiz her about. I wasn't very sure what special education was. She has over 3 decades of experience and has taught at the American School in Delhi as well as the Lab School in Washington. Obviously, she loves children and is passionate about giving each child tools to show their success. Sonya, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast. I'm very excited to speak to you, and I'm so happy that we're filming in one of these, recording in one of these nice classrooms where our kids come and play with these beautiful things, which maybe we can get into a little later. Just for my prep, I went on to the Learning Matters website, which I hadn't done in a while, and I was seeing your mission and vision, and the words that jumped out at me were that the joy you're trying to bring, the joy of learning, combining joy and learning, and as I was growing up in school, I really didn't think that was possible. That how can joy and learning come together? Because learning for me was such a task, and it was a burden because it's cramming information, it's structured studying, it's books, it's memorizing, and it's being tested on it. So how does one combine joy with learning? And I mean, isn't that a very big task for you to do?
Yeah, and I really I hear you. And unfortunately, that seems to be the scenario in a lot of places, and especially in our education system, where learning is not associated with something positive. But if you think about learning, not the classroom, just any learning, if you learn how to play an instrument, okay, I'm talking about without the stresses of performance associated. You're learning to dance because you enjoy dancing, learning to play golf because you want to play that sport. It is so joyous. Anytime we learn something, there's a sense of accomplishment. But I don't know if we can associate school with learning. I think schools, sadly, because schools are more associated with, I would say, learning what an outside decision has taken for you to learn. It's not intrinsically driven. So whenever learning is intrinsically driven, it's joyful. And I'm totally committed and passionate that children who are learning like sponges all the time must be given an environment where it's joyful. Whatever they are absorbing, experiencing, that it's a positive experience for them. So
But we're already putting so much, and I see it because I'm a relatively new parent. My son is going to be 3 soon, and already, and this is more peer pressure than I guess best practice, because everyone is like, classes, and by this age they must know the ABC, and they must know, the 1 to 10, and I find that so artificial in a way, that because I never learned like that, and school was a horrible experience for me, unfortunately. And I don't want to put, already the 3-year-olds, we're putting this kind of pressure on them. Definitely that's going to cause something to go wrong in their brains, and this cannot be the normal way of doing things.
I couldn't agree more with you. I could not see anything that flows easily is right. Whenever something is against our grain, so if it's against a child's grain, which developmentally the research is pointing very, very clearly, to be sitting for long times, to be holding a pencil when your fingers are not ready, to be learning abstract things as symbols called A or number 4 or whatever. The brain is not ready to process it. And so we are asking a child to do something that developmentally they're not ready to do. So obviously there's going to be a resistance, and so they're going against the tide of development. So obviously your experience was, and millions of children are going through this, and it's heartbreaking that at a policy level we are not looking at the research and giving our children what is developmentally appropriate. If I ask a 2-month-old to start walking and I make them stand and I give them things to hold on to and I insist, is it going to be a pleasant experience for that child? Is it right? First of all, we know it's not right because their muscles are not ready for that. So we're doing the same thing in a different level, where we're expecting 3-year-olds to wrap their heads around alphabets, or we are asking them to sit on a chair for extended time, even if it is 10 minutes, it's not appropriate. Or asking them to hold a pencil and actually be able to copy a shape of an alphabet, it's not developmentally appropriate. So and imagine a child who is so full of ideas and so rich in their thinking that we immediately put a lid and we restrict their learning to something that's so inappropriate. So then the first step of association with what we call school is a negative one, which you as a father experienced it, and I applaud you for being honest. And I don't know how many children in our country look forward to waking up and going to school, and that is not okay, because school should be a place where a child is expanding their mind, and the teacher's role is really to be so aware of the mind of each child in his or her classroom and take that forward. And so that's
So, you said the teacher's role. The first point that I had written to, get our discussion started was that, and I know this answer now, is that why do you have the most important job in the world? And people, I think, don't give it enough respect. So maybe you can help us understand.
And there again, I'm not saying this on my own, but there is research on this, that the number one influence, the number one factor that influences learning is the teacher. Wrong kind of teacher can shut down a mind and make it associate everything to do with that in a very negative way, and that same teacher can actually open a mind, and it's not just the mind, it's the heart, it's the emotions, it's the It's the ability to feel good about who we are. It's the ability to take a risk and make mistakes. And you're that's part of learning. Mistakes as a very, very important step towards learning. But if we are humiliated, or if we are, humiliated by being made to feel small about the errors that we've made, red lines under the wrong spelling, comments like "you can do better" are not helping in any way. So, and so teacher training, the kind of teacher, I mean, it's such an important role, because you're molding personalities, you're molding minds, which you are saying, it carries with you into your adolescence and adulthood and your relationships and your everything in life. So childhood is a very, very key stage where you're actually laying the architecture of the brain and of one's emotional health.
But is this in today's scenario, I guess it's not that much better than when I went to school maybe 30 odd years ago. We still have the standardized testing that all schools want their kids to do well, and because they want to get those averages and they want to come in the rankings. And what you're saying is amazing, and it would be
Utopian.
I mean, yes,
Yeah.
if more than a certain amount of schools, or if majority of the schools were following this policy, and I think some of them are, but I think still majority
Not
are
enough. Not enough.
not following it.
Not
and
enough.
and it's funny that I was such a bad student throughout academically. I didn't do well in school at all. But the few subjects or the few times that I ended up doing well and those are the teachers I remember. Those were my favorite teachers.
Exactly.
I'm not sure if that I was, pre-programmed to do well in certain subjects, or did I had an aptitude for mathematics, because I that was one odd subject that I did like. But that's because most of the times the maths teachers, or I had some sort of a relationship with them. There was some sort of a bond that went beyond that academic, or they were nicer to me than the other teachers. There has to be something there. Obviously, the teacher played a role.
And the key to that is, when you say there was something there, if we all, any one of us, look back on our childhood and say, what do we recall as the teacher I loved? It'll always be an affective reason, an emotional reason. Yes. It won't be because that teacher was so brilliant in disseminating this equation to my mind. It'll be because that teacher was kind to me, or that teacher understood me. So it's always an emotional connect that you will associate with positive. Mm-hmm. So we cannot isolate that and be, so kind of narrow on the content of what we want children to learn. It's a whole child. So we have to ensure that teachers understand. And then the other thing, like you said, math was maybe something that was easier for you. I mean, again, we know there are many different types of intelligences, so obviously for some it's their linguistic abilities that's stronger compared to their maybe body kinesthetic. Maybe they're more clumsy, but they're able to do maths very clearly. So, yeah. So, again, Howard Gardner, I mean, his work is been around for, decades now, but it's not finding its way into our classroom practice, that children can be smart in many different ways. And teachers have to be trained to see that. And how do we then... So I don't want to talk about the academic component, but if a child we know is physically gifted, or, has an affinity towards it, then how is it that we can do spellings through a physical way? You can. So these, this knowledge, I think teaching is a profession, just like being a doctor, being a lawyer. It's a body of knowledge that you need to have. And I think it's a key body of knowledge, because you're shaping minds, like we were saying earlier. Now, teacher training is non-existent.
And anyone can go do a 15-day course and become a teacher. I think something like a 30-day course.
Yeah, and it's a very weak course.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's easy.
So,
it's the same way I got a driving license when I was in class 9.
Yeah.
And I was, I think, 14.
Yeah.
Because you could pay 2,000 rupees and get it at the time. And I
look at
wanted
the
it
risk.
and I got it.
Yeah, but look at the risk. You could kill someone.
Absolutely.
Look at the risk if you're not educated properly as a teacher, because that knowledge is all, that body of knowledge you don't have, and you're dealing with children. Look at the risk. You're damaging and hurting and harming human beings that are going to then, it's a chain effect. Their marriages, their relationships, their ability to make friends, I mean, everything, their ability to, be a good parent. I mean, everything is linked. It's mind-boggling that we don't take it seriously, because I link everything to childhood. What happens in our childhood that's the adult we are going to become. That's the society we are going to create.
Is that like a Freudian theory that whatever happens is based on what happened to us as kids and
No, I think it's like a mix this and this, you get this. It's a very scientifically based thing. Of course, there are personalities. Some of us are more resilient. Some of us are more sensitive. Some of us can accept things in our. But there's always a damage. For some, it's latent. For some, it implodes. For some, it explodes. We are more anger prone because, all this is coming out. For some, we are getting ulcers and tumors and cancer because it's imploding. So, a healthy, emotional, all-round development is key.
And you need a brilliant teacher to be able to start addressing these things from a very young age and start identifying these things in the kids.
And I don't know if you need a brilliant teacher. I think you need an informed teacher who's open, who loves children.
I would call that a brilliant teacher in today's context, because I think, very few of them exist who are informed, who are connected, and I think who have the commitment that goes beyond just coming for the job and beyond just doing that.
And so that's why everyone should not become a teacher, just like, I could never dream of being someone who's in the technical field. That's just not where. So, you have to have the right sort of affinity to go into a profession. So, number one is you have to love children. You can't teach that.
Sure.
So if you love kids, be with kids. Then the teaching and the principles of child development and the principles of classroom management and the way of looking at children's work and all that can be taught. But, the number one thing every teacher has to do is connect with children, connect with each child in their classroom. And if you don't do that and you're connected to the so-called curriculum instead of the children, then you're missing the boat.
But as a parent now, and this started soon after my son was born, and there's this, at this age they need to start this preschool, or there's some sort of home classes, and then there's this mother toddler program, and then we've got sucked into this this rat race, or this peer pressure of our other friends are all young parents. We're all in our, early 30s, and everyone has young kids. And at this age, he started this, and he's doing so well, and he doesn't need, he can go to school without his mother now, and this is what they're doing in school. Or the other opinion is, they only go and play in school, or at home. How do I entertain him? He's only playing with the maids at home. And then I learned the importance of play, which is why, this is something that I'd like to discuss, more with you. And I had no idea that the fundamental of their learning at, this preschool age is play. And again, there was a concept because, work, and before we started recording, we were talking about work and play. Because even now I'm programmed that work is work. You're sitting at a desk and there's no noise, and, there's some seriously boring stuff in front of you, and play is the opposite of that. When there's
also play is like not serious enough. It's flippant.
Yes.
You don't give play weightage, right?
play school. As
Right.
you've spoken about this many times before, but I'd like you to just mention that again.
So, you want me to talk about the role of play?
I think the role of play and why, it's not just that they're coming to play school and
Yeah.
it's a very kind of, it's almost, it's not understood the
Yeah.
importance of, coming to play school.
Happily, I'm going to talk to you because I'm totally passionate about
And
this.
I know that you get comments like, oh, how sweet you run a
Play school.
play school. How
Yeah.
sweet. Like,
Huh.
it's
Yeah.
derogatory almost.
Yeah,
that,
it is, but
so-
it's, I also know it's lack of information. So, play, you see, and the other, this thing is, childhood is in and of itself a stage. And during childhood, now what are we doing? We are pushing adulthood into childhood more and more, expecting children to behave in certain ways that adults have a yardstick for. You know, whereas childhood is different. It's a stage in and of itself, and we are losing childhood now, at the risk of the rat race that you're talking about, that all you young millennial parents are getting sucked into. Again, when you look back at childhood, say my generation, or even your own, I don't know, think about it. There was so much time to just be and to just play. What is play? Play is self-initiated. Play is not doing arts and crafts. That's play. Play is not, I'm going to kick this ball into this goal and I'm playing outside. That is not what we're talking about here when I'm talking about the impact of play. We're talking about self-initiated play. That means I decide as how I want to play with these blocks. I want to turn it into a house, or do I want to turn it into my dog's little bed, or do I want to make it into a palace for the princess? That's my mind being able to think and create something through play. Play is a cognitive process. And it's a very, very important process because, like we were saying, in the early years, the brain architecture is being formed. And today, my other hat, I wear is working with children who are struggling with learning.
Yes.
And again, this is not just me, but worldwide, we are seeing this phenomena of students who are smart, bright, intelligent, and still not succeeding in school. That's because something that play does very naturally is lay the foundations for what today in the academic world is called executive skills.
Right.
Executive skills is our ability to plan, initiate, execute, stay on task, manage our time. Those skills play naturally does. When you see a child playing, he's got sustained attention. He's building that part of the brain that is focused and building that attention. But if you're going to ask a child to do something they don't want to, that you miss that whole ability for the brain to build those dendrites and connections that build on sustained attention. Time management, knowing, so we are seeing, initiating, you watch two children, naturally if they see something they'll initiate, chalo chalo chalo, you can be the dog and I'm going to be the mama, or no, you be the kitty and I'll be the doctor. Come, the kitty is sick and I'm going to do. So children are initiating, they are planning how they are going to play, and that play is related to their real world. They have a cat at home, or they've seen a cat that's been injured, they've been to the vet, so now they are enacting that. What is that doing? That's helping them understand the real world. I want to be mommy. They're seeing mommy dressing up, they also want to dress up. They also want to put a little bindi and pretend they're wearing a shiny sari and heels and they're going out. it's not just sweet. There's a serious process that is happening through that play. They are actually feeling comfortable in now being able to understand that real world as they are growing up. So we talked about getting meaning from the real world. We talked about sustained attention. We talked about initiating. We talked about following through on something. So in a classroom, when you'll see children playing, it's not about now clean up, clean up, clean up, come on, put everything away. A good, serious early years teacher will see what the child is building and will maybe even make that into a project. So that the child can revisit it. Yesterday, beta, you were building that thing and we saved it, or here's a picture I kept of it. Do you want to add to that? We were talking about, the next animal that they want to, or whatever it is they are thinking. So play is really serious work, thinking, cognition, which is laying the foundations for executive skills. We are seeing children in middle school who don't know when to study for the test. They don't know what to study. They don't know how to begin. They don't know how long they will need to, that time management. Kal something is due, aaj raat ko we'll start working. They can't finish their work. They're smart, they know, but they don't have the time management ability. Or a child who loses interest. And now, don't even get me started on technology and what that does to this flippant mind because of this fast pace, how
attention spans are getting shorter and shorter.
So, we really have to go back to our old world play where the child can just be. And we don't cast our shadow over. अच्छा ये क्या बनाया? अरे इसका छत नहीं बनाया, अब छत बनाओ, अब ये करो, अब वो करो. We are casting our shadow over the child's thinking. And it's so easy for us as adults to always butt in.
What you're saying just reminded me. A few days ago, my son was drawing something, and I said, "What is this? Is this sky?" I said, he had colored it green. I said, "No, sky." But I stopped myself.
Good.
Because I remembered what you said. I said, "Oh," I said, "It's green." I said, "Okay, there are no rules." I keep telling him there are no rules. The sky can be any color you want.
Yeah.
Because I remembered, but I had to stop myself. And maybe there were times that I'm unable to stop myself because it's such a natural reaction to say, no, the sky is either blue or black, or in Delhi, I don't know what color this is. But
and that is why those parent mornings began.
Yes.
That, because parents are spending so much more time, and anyone can become a parent. So they are not well versed with child development and things. So as a professional, it's I think a very important part of our responsibility is to build that connection with parents, so that, because we're all working for the child, so this triangle of the child, the parent, the school has to work in tandem. And it is part of our role as professionals to share that with parents.
And I believe that, more than ever before, parents are spending more and more time with their kids, which I was like, no, I don't think that's possible. But apparently the stats are that we're spending, but yet more. Where are we going wrong though? We're spending more time with our kids, but we're still
not seeing the outcomes.
We're not seeing the outcomes, and perhaps we're doing the wrong things, and kids are
so like I said, I think the childhood is being lost, because even if we're spending more time with the kids, we are casting our shadow over the children too much of what we think is the right thing. Oh, that doesn't look like a sky is not green. Or where is the hand of this person you made? Instead of being able to say, it's a developmental state that the child draws earlier is just a round face and the legs come out straight from the head.
I still draw like that.
Till you see, and that's why the child's work is so diagnostic. It tells you their development, what's happening. Oh, now look at this child who's, I wish I had the ability to show you samples, but oh, now even this child has eyelashes also, and the fingernails have come. Not somebody has told them. That's at their developmental stage. Or this child now is, what we call mark making is the first step of writing. So mark making is for a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, it's those scribbles. That's the first stage of writing.
But we want them to jump, no, right? This is A, this is A for apple, B
and
for
then
ball.
you start seeing, now they've got some understanding of the sound and association with the letter. By the time they're 4, some of them are naturally emerging at that point. It cannot happen at 3.
But we're pushing it now.
But it cannot happen. That's why the negativity associated with that.
And we're also unfortunately pushing it because, including myself, and I know all parents that I speak to, is about admission into the big school because there's those 4-5 good schools in Delhi that everyone wants to
the
get into.
expectation is not developmentally appropriate. I mean, you look at countries that are ranked as number 1 in their education, like Finland.
Sweden.
They do not begin with the alphabets till age 7. Yeah. Because they are doing something so much more important, where a child is building their personality of being a problem solver, being empathetic to friends,
and all
being able to use language. All this is coming through play. All this is happening through play.
But in India, we're pushing it earlier and earlier and earlier. And I think now, admission for the big school as such is happening a year or 2 earlier than when we went to school.
Yes.
And that is really bothering me. And I'll tell you what the problem is.
It should.
The problem is, and why we've also got sucked into it in a way, is unfortunately, and I've just been informed about this a few months ago, which is why we also started panicking about admissions, is if you choose to send your child later to school,
a year later
or 2 years later,
missed the bus.
No, you've missed the bus because they still give priority to the kids that they think are in the right age group. So when you were supposed to send them is at when they're 3+. And if I choose to send him at 4+ or 5+, he's going to be lower down in the priority list. That means chances of him not getting in are huge, which is a huge risk as a parent. No parent wants to take that risk because you don't get that school that you want.
And I'm seeing this really in the last 4-5 years. This change
I have no idea because we've obviously come into this in the last few years. And why can't, if I want to send my kid a year later or 2 years later to school, shouldn't it be my problem and shouldn't that be my prerogative, my decision? And if the kid is good enough, take him. Don't penalize the kid. I don't know if this is a monetary thing for the schools that they want to cash in earlier, or it's some sort of a government mandate that they're following.
It's also too few schools for too many children. So it's not like, there'll be a space in first grade because their pre-K, K has already come into and they are going to automatically. So then there's no entry point of space unless so that's the logistical thing. But I really feel at a policy level, the government should not have these big schools have 3-year-olds, because 3-year-olds should be in a home kind of a play environment, smaller numbers, and so the big school should only begin at
4, 5, 6.
At 5.
That would be amazing. That would be great.
By then the child is.
We'd be more comfortable too as a parents. But having said that, I think we are, some of the parents that we know are rare, but parents are now in a hurry to push the kids out because they want to get back to their work, or, I want my life back. You should have thought of that before having kids if you want your life back. And I kept telling my wife this because I was totally against having kids first, because I knew that I would be totally involved and that I would not compromise, and that would be my priority. Unlike other parents who want to have the kids, and I'm not judging them for that. It's it's their call, it's their kid, it's their life. But if you're gonna want to push them out, I just need a break, or of course everybody needs a break. Or I just want to send them to school and just have my day back or get back to work. Don't have kids. You have the option now. Everyone has the option now, and more kids. I mean, of course, in India it would help. Don't have kids. Yeah, we're already dying of overpopulation.
Absolutely.
But so I've gone on this rant. But the problem is so for how do we deal with it? Like I was going to ask you, and a lot of people that my wife follows a lot of these podcasts and bloggers who are kid specific, and a huge number of people in the West are homeschooling their kids now.
Even in India, homeschooling is catching up.
And I don't know. Honestly, sometimes I feel I should just homeschool him because I can control the environment totally, but then I'd be the typical helicopter parent, which I already am. I'm already on his head a lot. But I don't know what your thoughts on homeschooling. What are your thoughts on homeschooling? Is it a good idea?
I mean,
Considering.
there's always a balance. So in homeschooling, you lose out on all the ability to problem solve with other kids, because you learn a lot from other children.
Sure.
And that's important part of the whole social development of our personalities. But if it's hurting the child, like, you're still carrying that weight of your schooling with you, so talk to parents who are homeschooling. It also requires a parent who's then only doing that.
Sure. Yeah.
But so it requires a certain kind of parent who's naturally drawn towards observing their child and stretching their thinking, and if this is a child who's really into nature, then making sure that kind of learning in their brain carries on. And there are curriculums, and it's done in a with utmost understanding and emotional safety for the child. But it's sad that we have to choose.
I mean, the only reason I'm thinking of homeschooling, or I'm asking you, is because even though I don't want to send him to the big school at this age, I am forced
your hands are tied.
Well, not exactly, because I mean the hands are tied in the sense because the fear is, what if he doesn't get into the XYZ school that we want for him at a later date because we chose to not send him. And this has happened to a friend of ours who wanted to send their kid a year later, and they got penalized for it, and they had the right passport to get into the right school, and the right address, and the right
all the points,
but it was held against them that they sent the kid later, or there was, because of, I mean, the sheer demand supply, they didn't have the number of seats. So that kid is studying in a vernacular school.
I hear you, and that's why I'm pained, because for us who are so committed and involved with our children, to know that they are going to now very soon be in a totally different, deprived, lack of another word, environment, that it's really making me think that no, we need to keep going higher and higher in our grades so that we can actually take this journey for the child forward to a point where they are formed completely. So I struggle with this.
We're waiting for you to start a K-12 school.
I struggle with this every day. I struggle, even if it's not K to 12, at least K to 5, by then the child, you've laid the sort of
foundation is solid.
Yeah, and like I always say, when there's going to be a famine, do you start depriving the children to cope with the famine, or do you nourish them? So till 5th grade, you nourish them, so that then they are strong enough to take on. You've given them enough muscle then to be able to carry on in confidence in who they are, to be able to ask questions, to be able to know themselves as individuals, to be able to, know their own self. Here, our children are not even given a chance to, I'm telling you, we had, I don't know if I shared this with you, but last year we had a young IIT grad who worked with us.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote to me from Calcutta that I would like to come and apprentice at Learning Matters. He just finished his engineering from IIT. Wow. And when he came, of course, and he wrote a very powerful email to me, and he had already done a lot of homework on early years and what he had read and things. I said, why are you doing this? Hello, 23, He said, I was in charge in IIT for my batch for job placements of kids, of students who are, companies come. So it was I was in charge of preparing them for those interviews.
Okay.
That they'll ask you this and all that. He said one of the questions that I was talking to my peers was that they might ask you about yourself, And he says, when I started hearing them saying, Ankur, tell me, what should I say about myself?
IIT grads don't
Yeah.
know what to say about themselves.
About who you are. That he said, this is your premier institution, and these people don't even know who they are. There's something wrong. And he researched and he said, early years is when we start building this whole sense of self, who you are. And then, he came, he came for 3 months, but he stayed on for over a year.
Okay, wow.
He had never encountered children.
Right.
So I remember when he first came, he was like so nervous. How do I answer? What do I do? And when he left after over a year, he wept because he had enjoyed himself so much. And today, a year later, obviously he changed his track in life, and he's gone and set up his own early years program in Calcutta.
Right.
And it's such a joy to see this young boy who is now getting excited with children, and his family had a property that he said, I can convert. And in the afternoons, he's doing all kinds of exciting robotics and coding and all that with the older kids. And feeling good about what he's doing. You have to find a passion. And he found that passion.
Wow, but this is one of those, rare stories or rare cases of this happening, I assume. Because
we're so conditioned.
It's assembly line, this, pass this exam, do this and get a job, 9 to 5.
Yeah, but at a very heavy cost. At a very heavy cost of our mental and emotional health. And last night, not related, but I went to a music evening, and this woman was wild who was singing, but she was doing her own thing. And I said, good for her. She was wearing pants with a sari. She was singing classical Indian with Led Zeppelin.
Wow.
And, and she was jumping all over the stage. And I was envying her spirit. How fantastic to have that breakout.
Yeah, she's still with you, so that means that she clearly did something that is created an impact.
So yeah, exactly. So we want that for our children, because only then can we become individuals who will actually connect with this world, will make a difference in this world, will, there's a purpose to our life. Our life cannot just be about being born and follow this track and earn money and marry and have children and, look at the mess we've created in this world.
For sure. I'm with you on that totally. Of 12 years of, kind of working in a formal setup, I was the unhappiest and most depressed and anxious that I've ever been. And I think for me personally, the best decision was just a little while before my son was born to just quit all this. And it was a hard decision to take, but I was fortunate enough to take it and then stick to it. And people still ask me that, how do you pass your time, or how do you not work? And I have to explain to them that no, I do work, but this is what work is for me.
Yes.
I said, if spending quality time with my son is more work, and sometimes I am, mentally exhausted after taking him, let's say, to the library for 1.5 hours, because, just being able to engage with your child, technology free, and spend even an hour with them actually sometimes drains me because I'm not used to it.
Yeah, and also you maybe you don't know children, so like for us here at Learning Matters, it's such a joyous 3 hours we spend, because we know, it's like if you know dogs, then you're easy with dogs. Sure. If you know children, you're easy with, it's no effort. Anything we're really good at doesn't take effort.
But I'd still rather, even though, it may be an effort on my part, but I'd still rather do that all day, every day, than
and
sit
outside
behind
of
a
that,
desk.
other things, whether it's your own reading you want to do, whether it's even time to reflect on, life and who you are and where you're heading, whether it's, everybody doesn't have to have this desk job and So, to each, there's a different way that it works.
But aren't we, we're trying to program these kids to have desk jobs from the beginning, because from the age of 3...
And there won't be desk jobs by the time they grow. We cannot predict.
Yeah,
we cannot
absolutely.
predict from 5 years from now what the job market will be.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
Look at the hubris that we are trying to prepare. But one thing we do know, irrespective, is that those human qualities of being able to problem solve, being able to be creative, being able to think outside the box, being able to analyze, being able to be reflective, those will be needed irrespective, 30 years down the road, 40 years. Getting along, collaborating. So those are the skills we need to be really nurturing and working on, not the recall, restate, even a parrot can do it, even a monkey you can make. With artificial intelligence coming, with technology taking over, human jobs are going to go at a rate
for sure,
very, very fast. So if we have to stay, engaged in the world, we have to have those human, which are only human beings can do, and no other species can, or a machine can do, is that ability to think.
And
empathize.
And
Compassion. Those are the skills. And you don't need to go to college to be a Bill Gates, right? So,
or a Steve Jobs, neither of them did.
So you have to think outside the box. You have to be able, the other day I was watching Bill Gates' documentary and I was like, my God, that's real smarts.
Yeah.
And no school can teach you that.
Yes, agreed.
Right?
100%.
You can lay the
100%.
And there is again enough studies and research to show school success and life success have no correlation.
Absolutely, and I've said that forever because I had to, because I was never successful in school.
Yeah.
And I've always said that academic intelligence has nothing to do with
And it's not academic intelligence. Yeah. It's just that. I don't know. It's that ability to memorize. And today you don't need to memorize. Everything is on the hard drive. You have to be trained to know what to look for
and how to operate
and
it,
how to critique what you're looking at. Just because the Google says it doesn't make it right.
Yes.
Just because it was written in your textbook doesn't make it right. And as a human being, you have to be trained to question. We don't want obedient children. Obedient children are dangerous children.
Sure.
Look what happened in Germany. Everybody was obedient to Hitler. That, you can have mass destruction. So, like teacher Tom talks about it beautifully, about not wanting obedient children. And he says, even with my 2-year-olds, I'm building that. Like, I'll say silly things like, the pig says, moo. And then, you want children to pay attention.
This is interesting, but we need to be taught this as parents too, that try and...
We don't want obedient children. We want thinking children. We want children to question a rule.
Why is this like this?
Yes. And we have to, as adults, be able to justify. Because I told you so is not, because I'm your dad, is not really laying the right thinking for the child. So even here, when I'm talking to my teacher, I'm continuously training them in that. Listen to the child. Are you really able to listen what the kid is thinking? Are you able to then nudge that thinking to the next level? Observe what they're playing with. And do not cast your shadow. That's the thing I keep saying, we cannot.
I think that's a tough one, and we have to work on that. I'm going to work on it myself now that you're saying, remember those words, cast your shadow. Don't cast your shadow on everything that he's doing. Rather than casting a shadow.
That is clipping their wings.
How to kind of expand or help him expand on what he's doing rather than cast a shadow. I don't know, would that be considered the opposite of casting a shadow?
Yes, because, that whole helicopter parenting, that whole, this is, I know best, this is how you should be doing it, and where is the blue sky, and
Yes,
how does the cat look without the tail, we are casting our shadow. Whereas observing what they are doing and listening to how their thinking came about to that, and then just nudging it. Oh, I wonder how this cat is going to be hearing. How do you hear? You have ears. Does this cat have any ears? And then just seeing where the kid is in their understanding. They might say, no, he doesn't have ears. All right, your kitty is without ears. Accepting that. Till the time you'll see that, next, whenever that stage comes, where so many more details are now coming in their thinking.
And you speak a lot about the importance of language and, how, again, that's along with play or, integrated with play, with or without it. I mean, the whole importance of language and how that also helps, develop those executive functions and just language on its own. And I think that's something in India, in a lot of places, perhaps gets compromised in a way, because I've noticed that, and I'd like to believe, obviously every parent thinks their kid is a genius and is great, but I just feel that my child's language is far ahead of his years. That's because he spends a lot of time with us and he hears us talk, and we don't try and simplify things, and we use
regular
as rich
words.
Language as possible, and he uses them mostly correctly, and if not, he asks.
He's getting there. Yeah.
At least he can use reasonably complicated words. Whether he understands them or not is step 2, and that's how he will get to understand them. Because if he's using a word and he doesn't understand what it means, he's going to ask, well, what does this mean? And sometimes he even asks how simple, what simple words mean, and I know sometimes he knows what it means. He's just kind of, it's like a play thing for him. What does this mean? Or so can you just educate us a bit about the use of language and how we should, or what's the best thing to do?
And so going back to what you're saying, he knows it, but he is just pushing this thing. So children need a lot of repetition. They need a lot of repetition. They want to hear the same story again.
Yeah. Oh my
again.
God.
That is developmentally a marker, a junction of children. So you must, because then they can predict. And if you leave out one thing also, they'll catch you.
And they'll correct you.
They'll catch you. What about that? So that is, it is, and you can't say, oh no, I'll read you a different book now. They need repetition. Repetition is needed in childhood. That's a part of childhood. Okay, if you're going to put our adult shadow, then we'll say, but we've already read that. Then again, we are casting our shadow. Okay? But language is related to thinking. And words kind of articulate our thinking. And language is directly linked to intelligence.
Okay.
That, yes, we know. A child who has no language, there's a cognitive deficit. Okay, now there can be a stage where someone starts speaking later. That can happen. But I'm just saying, someone who can't speak well, there's something linked with their brain development. It's a big marker.
Okay.
So, and it's in the early years where that whole neural pathways of language are developing, just like the muscular pathways are developing,
right?
Just like the social pathways are developing, just like so language is developing. I mean, when you look at from birth to one, look at the motor development. A child who could is now walking,
right,
is able
Huge
to
jump,
now whole, look at the development that happened in their muscular system, physical system. So similarly, the language thing is growing at a very, and there's again enough this thing to see children who come from language rich homes, their vocabulary, their ability to understand so much more because they've got the crutch of the words. And that's why you see little children, toddlers, because they don't have language, their language is hitting out.
Right.
Or their language is scratching. And it's not wrong. It's just that they haven't got another tool yet.
That's their way of communicating.
Yes. So you, and of course, I believe in, the whole Reggio saying of a child has 100 languages. There's the language of movement, there's the language of art, there's the language of clay, there's the language of play, all that. But I'm talking about verbal linguistic language that we are talking about here. It is very important that the child is, because how is language learned? By hearing. So if you don't hear and you're left with the ayah who's just saying, kya kar raha hai? Mat karo, there's such paucity of language as against saying, did you notice the elephant's feet? And did you see, so you're giving them the words to observe the world that they are. But if you don't give them that, then there's no hearing of language. So that's receptive language. Reading is receptive language. And then comes expressive language, which is verbal. So then you're able to speak. So you have a lot of children where parents are worried, my child is not speaking yet. Then first question I'll ask is, do they understand? When you tell them something, are they following your direction? Are they understanding? Samajh that. Theek hai, aa jayega. Again, it's a developmental thing. You cannot push it.
And every child obviously has their own learning curve, and
some
as you said,
some walk at 10 months, some walk at 18 months. They may still very much be between.
So other things being constant, if they assume all kids are speaking at X age, after that, there is a direct correlation between by this time they should be, 3-letter words or sentences, and they should be forming sentences with 3 words. I want water. Sometimes I've read that by this age you should be saying this or should be being able to communicate about that. Or are they just saying pani? They're not stringing sentences. Then you need an intervention of a language therapist. But at home, as a general practice, and that's why technology is very harmful for language development. Harmful. Why? Because why can't I substitute, 20 minutes of the maid with 20 minutes of, Peppa Pig or something like that?
Because language is learned through interaction and active engagement. Okay, so there's a give and take of language, whereas technology
I
is
say something
passive.
And it's
technology is passive. So have you noticed children's expression?
Oh yeah, they're zombies for sure.
They're like, it's like something has happened and they're
and if you ask, if I have to, so we do. I'm going to come to technology and all this. Maybe I'll speak about it then. But in the middle you mentioned nannies and why they were. So my next point was,
early years, you've really got to have the right kind of, when this brain architecture is being formed at the highest rate, never again will it be at this rate. From birth to 4, 5, that's when it's key. So at that stage, if you're going to not offer the child the richness, it's
and a nanny
and then
cannot
those neural dendrites, what they automatically you prune them, they go away, whereas they are growing. So the more you do, the more it will grow. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but normally in the West, where people don't have help the way we do, and parents are engaging with the children, they talk so much, and they talk with such sort of understanding,
confidence.
Yeah, it's because they've heard that, and that's been their exposure in the environment.
And nannies and staff at home cannot provide. They can provide it to perhaps some extent, but not the level that a parent would be happy with, or what should happen at a certain age.
And now and in the West, what the danger I'm seeing is that now the technology is substituting as a nanny.
Right.
And we are seeing that here with nannies also. They are all the time on their phones, and then the kids want
nannies are the grandparents are. So unfortunately, that's a dangerous trend that needs to be.
And it's going to impact how we develop our connections in this world. 100%. less and less able to relate to others. Three room, three people on their
Oh yeah,
gadget.
for sure.
We're not even listening, we're not even attending, we're not even observing your facial moods, your emotion. So and we've got as adults a lot of history that has already been developed. So then if we do it, it's not that bad. Whereas children, it's just that's being formed and it was never formed. So there's no history to go by.
Yeah, that's very scary.
There's no history there. Which this
you mentioned
Erica in
this
book explains that very well.
So we were, talking about technology, and we got this email from you about, the importance of being little. The book you're going to read something, from, and so if you can, go ahead.
So I like, look at this, that we should not forget that children learn through relationships. And a child can learn much when a relationship is strong. So technology, there's no relationship. That I was talking about, the give and take that happens.
Except the fact that we're all addicted to it, but there's no relationship.
Addiction is again, there's a reason. There's a reason what that dopamine, what watching a video does release in the brain, which is an addictive thing.
Absolutely.
The same thing that heroin does, the same thing
gambling,
that
heroin,
does.
sex, food.
Yes. So then it releases that. But without the and in childhood, like we're talking about, it's a whole different stage where so much else should be developing. And as adults, at least, like I was saying, we have that history of that, whereas in childhood, we haven't even begun with that. So it's extremely damaging.
But I can't even blame these kids, because all they see their and their parents mostly, and of course I'm going to generalize now, their parents and their grandparents, and everyone is just on some sort of digital device. So naturally they want to copy their parents. So this is what they'll want to do. Is that I want the phone, or even I want to.
Obviously, if you don't speak to your child clearly, their language is going to have paucity. Similarly, children learn from their environment. So if in an environment everybody is connected to, hooked up to some device, and then we tell the child not to be, you have to model what you want. So you have to, as a parent, as a responsible parent, know that you can't, there's a time for your cell phone, which is when the kid is sleeping or you're watching television, has to be. And then whatever that there's all this thing of how much TV is per day,
right,
and all that. But even in that, it has to be with an adult. It's not substituting adult time with TV time.
No, so this I learned from one of your sessions, and I do enjoy watching Peppa Pig with him a lot. Like I'm actually a fan of Peppa Pig, and why I allow him to watch Peppa Pig is, firstly, the language is great. It's that perfect British accent. Not that I want him to pick up a British accent, but that English is perfect. And now
so
when he is,
language and accent are two different.
Yeah, I understand, but they're using very good, polite language. They use complicated words, complete sentences. And
the pace is slower.
Peppa is a multi-billion dollar brand, but what I do tell him now is that even if I'm not 100% paying attention, I say, you watch and ask me questions, so that there's a bit of a pause, or there's a bit of a break, or ask me questions about something you don't understand, or I try and ask him or pause and say, oh, did you see that, or what do you think of that? Because I feel it's just that one little 10-second break or something to break that constant engagement. And we do, and I mean, this can be debated. We do allow him a certain amount of TV time every day, and
you can use it as a reward.
No, it's like, that it's in a routine. His time is fixed. After his evening bath, he gets to see a bit of TV before his dinner, and it works well for us. And whenever I want to stop, I'm going to tell him, okay, this is last. He says, okay, last, and then it's fine. He's okay to move on to the next activity, which is his dinner and maybe reading books or doing that. And we've incorporated that. And I keep trying to tell people that today TV is better than the phone or iPad for various reasons, because of the that blue tone, which is is damaging the retina, and you have ways to fix that. As you can download the filter to, that blue light blocking filter on your iPad or your phone. The iPhones and iPads have that inbuilt. So do the Samsung devices now.
Okay.
But I just feel TV, firstly, you're further away from it, and those TVs are still, I think, a little bit better on your eyes, despite what people may say, than an iPad or a phone right up against your. Also, TV it's not a portable object. It's there. It's used by the remote, and then you're out of that room. This can go with you everywhere. The phone can go with you everywhere. So that little bit extra addictive nature of it, because it's accessible more easily. So that's just my take on the TV, and of course.
Yeah, I think the overall question is really our engagement with technology, and
sure.
for children.
Sure.
That at that stage where they need to be developing through interaction, through the give and take, and children learn, like I've said, maximum happens with interaction and play. So that's where the focus needs to be, and not on sitting for long hours on a gadget, because it's to the detriment of their development.
And what do we do when the school at a certain class says that, oh, now this, because now schools are introducing iPads and technology and that, which is great. But
at least it's
I feel that it should be done after a certain age.
Yeah, I agree.
No, but all the homework is on laptops and iPads now, and I'm not really okay with that, in the sense that, because that's that much more time that they're on that device. Now it may be for homework, or it may be for downloading the homework, or it's extra. It's more than what's required. I understand the importance of the use of technology, and if you have to make a presentation, you have to research. Nobody's going to sit in a library and open encyclopedias anymore. It's just you type it on Google. But why is it being introduced so early? I mean, what's the hurry again?
That's the question.
In everything, what's the hurry?
That's the $1 million. And there's a brilliant book called The Hurried Child. I think it's David Elkind who wrote that, written many years ago. And so today we are seeing more and more of that. I agree. So as I don't know, as parent bodies, we have to be more engaged, and not that parents have much option. Take your kid out, if you don't like our school. That's what we'll be told.
Absolutely.
So it's not like you have a voice.
Hence the homeschooling option, which is tough. It's a very tough one.
That's why whatever, at least in our home environment, which is majority of the hours children have, we can be a little more informed about how, what are the values we are imparting to our children. What is the priority in our home as far as the child and the family goes. So those things at home we can do. Outside world, the child, so we can build the, that, like we were talking about, if, from early years to 5th grade, you've given them the coping skills, then they can go out into the world and take it on. Because you should not control the world. You have to give them the skills for them to cope in the world, not mollycoddle them and cotton wool them. Then you're not really helping them. It's like in the afternoon, the students we see who come to us for any kind of academic need, we are not making them dependent on us. We want them to be independent. So we're giving them the skills they need to be able to fly in whatever that world is. And that is beyond our control.
Sure.
But who we are is in our control. And we come from a culture like India where thousands of years ago we were given this whole, there is this knowledge here on being a reflective person, dhyan, know yourself. How do we do that? Because the outside world you cannot control, but your inside world you can. So at a children's level, give them the skills they need to be able to manage this world that they're going to be working in, interacting in, growing up in.
So you were going to read, did you manage to find that? You were going to read something. I was going to move on from, digital devices to another subject, and in the middle. So before Zavin joined Learning Matters. Actually, after he joined it in the middle, we got again swayed by some peer pressure and tried to put him in a Montessori system, and he was there for all of, I think, a week.
So we may use certain because sort of materials that practical life. Montessori has something called practical life that
Right.
means pouring,
Right.
or spooning.
That's naturally going to come and play anyway,
exactly.
right?
So, a teacher may choose in the play area and the manipulatives to put a practical life kind of thing. I'm going to put spoons into katoris. So that bit we may be doing, but again, it's come because we feel the children are ready to do this, or we observed yesterday when they were eating, someone was eating with a spoon, and so let's give them a little more practice in the play area,
Right.
and so we provide it.
But you don't call yourself a Montessori.
No, we are not.
Because, otherwise it's, Montessori method and the best Montessori school in XYZ
No.
location.
We are hugely inspired and trained by two approaches in early childhood. One is called the high scope.
High scope.
Scope.
High scope.
The high scope is a program that 3 decades or more ago grew out of a little place in the US,
Right.
called Ypsilanti, where they did the only really early childhood longitudinal study has been done. 20 years they followed the preschool kids.
Right. Okay.
And
okay.
she in this book she's mentioned high scope, and I was like, yes.
That is the importance of being little.
Yeah. So, and I've spent 2 summers in high scope,
Like a program.
understanding and
Right.
in the
Okay.
program,
Fantastic.
and what are those key experiences young children should have, and so high scope did this longitudinal study where they followed children for 20 years.
Right.
What's the difference between them, and so we follow their principles. And again, it's very, very, it all, when you're a certain kind of person, you are attracted to the same kind of thing. So very much observing children, very, very much play-based, very much looking at play in a deeper way.
Right.
And the other more recent sort of part of my education has been the Reggio Emilia approach. And that is,
Is that new?
so sophisticated. It's new to me.
But is it new?
No.
It's also
Reggio's been there since Second World War.
Oh, wow.
And
similar to Montessori then, in terms of I think Second World War is when Maria Montessori.
But Reggio Emilia is the name of a town in Italy.
Right.
After Second World War, the founder of this system called Loris Malaguzzi, how he said, never again should a community or our citizens have to go through this kind of pain. And so the mothers of that town, brick by brick, built schools. And then this whole thing about the respect for children, and the whole town is engaged in the children, the architects, the artists, the musicians, and so it's like heaven for children, and the depth of learning. That little 2-year-olds have the finest chefs coming and showing them how to cook, and they go out and looking at columns and what the shadows are being cast. The architect is bringing their eyes to that, to the musicians. It's 15, and these are all government run schools. 15% tax everybody pays towards the children's education.
Oh, 15%, that's huge.
Huge. So, and I mean, for someone who's been in early years now for 40 years, it is mind-blowing, the sophistication of thinking and expectations and production of what little children do.
And there's a program which you can now follow and incorporate in, let's say, somebody wants to learn?
So you can go and get trained.
You can go and get trained, okay.
It's like a first step, then second step. There's no end to that training.
Understood.
It's not like you've gone and done a master's or something.
So you've picked up things from there as well.
They have institutes. Yeah, they have training institutes for international teachers, and So in 2017, Samara and I went to that, and just the whole school, and I mean, we visited more than 30 schools in the course
Wow.
of our institute. And like our jaw was dropping at every corner. So we are hugely inspired by them. And that seems right. And today, Harvard and Yale, where she's from, they're all studying the Reggio Emilia approach.
And that organically came out of, that town,
yes,
basically.
Yes. So that's who we are is our role model that we want to emulate. And you cannot be a Reggio Emilia school and you should not, because that's Italy, that's that town, that's unique to their culture, but you can be inspired by them. And so you can say, yes, you're Reggio inspired, and that's who we are.
We're definitely not that town, because my next question was going to be about, and I know that's not your area of expertise, but living in Delhi, it's all of our, it better be an area of expertise. I was going to talk to you about, the air quality and bringing kids up in this toxic air, and I've been studying so much about this, and it leads
the
to
health
huge mental retardation in kids, drop in huge
Dementia,
number
there
of
was some study I was
IQ
reading
points
from Germany,
depression, all that. They're linking this pollution to everything, and it's this is a, I understand that geographically we're kind of unfortunate enough to be locked in, and meteorologically we're locked into this cage. But it's also a problem we've created ourselves. And so how do I, sending my kids to school or even to preschool, and when I know what the air quality is, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I'd rather keep them at home half the time, and especially during this season after Diwali. So I don't know what your thoughts on this are.
Get away from Delhi when the levels are so high, nothing like that's number one, because again, like we said, children need to run and play and move, because all that has direct impact on their brain architecture. So it's not like running and climbing is separate from reading and writing. Okay? If the balance, the vestibular system, what we call, it's the proprioceptive system. These are all technical words I'm using. But it's, mind and body are connected. And in the early years, this whole muscular development is happening, which is impacting the brain development. So outdoors and, using our large muscles is hugely, again, framing our brain architecture, which is related to how is balance related to reading ability. All that has been established, in how we train our teachers. So a child's right to play, a child's right to be able to run outdoors and be in nature is, you cannot even put a value on that.
But we can't give that to them in this city.
And if we're not giving, how sad is that?
Very sad. And this is home.
And so that's why, even inside in our classroom, we've got equipment where they are able to run and climb and push and balance, and,
it's just not the same.
That's why we don't have desks and sitting down and all that, because there's a reason why we do what we do, linked to children's development. But pollution as a reality, and so, I mean, I'm hoping that, we are paying our taxes to the government, and it's their duty to ensure that, our air and water is clean.
But I am not a crazy parent if I am using a device to check the pollution on a particular day and choosing to keep my child at home. Doesn't matter if the school is open, closed, whether the government has declared an emergency or not. I'm not crazy, right? Or am I crazy?
I would say, it's your prerogative as a parent to know how much you're willing to expose your child to a certain, and what are the risks. Absolutely, health comes first, safety of health comes first. And at the same time, we have to do the best we can. You ensure your home is, got plants, and, the rooms have plants, and the rooms have air purifier. Whatever you can do, you will do. And we have to ensure that our schools also do that, so that where the kid is coming, at least there is some protection that's being done. Like, you were saying, Sonia, I want to give an egg so that then you guys can have a closer monitoring. So we support, like, I mean, even
I want to give an egg is a pollution monitor.
Yeah, no, but even here, this whole idea of having 2 air purifiers in every classroom grew out of a parent. She came and she said, Sonia, I know this man, he supplies, can I have him come? So we don't have all the answers, and we have to work as a community to improve our but I'm number 1 game for it. And she was saying that how the other school, how much had to fight with the principal.
I know that because I think my someone from my family, the kids go to the same school, and perhaps they go to the same school. So it's a big struggle to get these done in schools now.
Yeah, I don't know why people are resisting.
Makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because
so it'll take time, for people's mindset. I mean, why is our bloody HRD minister still insisting that our air is improving? I mean, which planet are you coming from? It's the mindset of the people that takes time to change. And so again, it's your priority, and if you really want to give children what is their right, it's not anything special we're doing, it's just their right to breathe clean air, it's their right to have play, it's their right to be able to be heard, it's their right to be messy, it's their right to explore. I mean, so it is very, very dark and disheartening as to what's happening with the air quality, and what, our lungs are still at our ages where they are. But, we know the 2 vulnerable groups are the very young and the very old. And
And the rest of them, like me, are neither young nor old, but I'm asthmatic, living in the city. So pretty much the entire city needs to be, extremely careful about.
I think there has to be a huge, unanimous shout and cry about not accepting this. And
I think that's happening.
I was reading somewhere that they were saying that have like a bandh, and a bandh when nothing works in the city, only then will they hear. Like no offices, no taxis, nothing works that day. And then only that, oh my God, the city has come to a shutdown, like 100% shutdown, like a nuclear explosion. Only then will they wake up? I mean.
So as usual, you are one of the people that I can keep having this discussion with, but keeping time in mind. And there were so many other things that I wanted to talk to you about, but we'll perhaps do that in the next step. I wanted to speak to you about children with special needs. That's something we've left out, but we can maybe come back to that the next time.
I think that in an office can be another.
Yeah, let's do that. But just so before we conclude, just is there one recommendation that can you give an anxious parent like me or anxious parents like me that we can do to in the context of your area of expertise? And I know what you're going to say, I think, but so what's the one thing that we can do as a parent to let my child just grow mentally
healthy? I would say give them opportunities to play. And by play, I mean self-initiated. And don't cast your shadow over their play. Observe them, connect with them, listen to them. That's very important, that we hear our kids, and not, we've talked about that we put our agenda on them. Cut that. And become more mindful of, am I really hearing what he's saying? And then am I responding to his thoughts, or am I judging it? No judgment. It's really being good listeners, good observers, and knowing the value that play is bringing to their development, and not casting a shadow over them. I would say those would be the mota.
Thank you.
Points.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank you for
your. I'm always available for you as a parent. That Sonia, I tried this didn't work. Should I? That's what is my responsibility, and I enjoy that.
No, thank you.
Even
I
in
really appreciate it.
behavior, what do I do? And that's why the coffee mornings and the next one's coming up next Friday. So we'll talk more.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you're doing. And where can people get in touch with you or Learning Matters? If you can just share, if somebody wants to, get in touch with you or Learning Matters specifically, maybe they want to check it out for their kids, or if you
So
can
we have a website.
That's learning-matters.org.
A website that talks about our different programs, and there's a phone number and a contact. We're right now only one center in Delhi.
We're waiting for you to change that.
Yeah. We're hoping.
And we're waiting for you to expand this footprint as well.
Yes, we're hoping, and we're also hoping to expand vertically.
Yes, that's what I mean, actually.
Yeah. Because I think there's a need. So they can contact us on that, and I'd be happy to take as many children as we possibly can within our understanding. We're not a number-based school, as you know. We don't have more than 10, 12 children in a classroom with 2 teachers, because if you want to do the work you're doing, you've got to be able to know your children, and for that you need to observe and have a close connect. It's not a herd mentality. Everybody is doing this and everybody is doing that cookie cutter approach. So we'll never be a number game, but we'll be a deeper. Did you see the newsletter I had sent to all the parents from
No, I haven't read it yet. I have to. There were 2-3 articles and things you sent together, so I will be seeing them.
So one was an article on how kindergarten teachers are crying in the US.
In fact, I'll link that.
This whole thing of pushing back academics.
I'm going to link that in the podcast so that everyone can.
That was in Psychology Today. And the other one I sent was just a sample of the depth of how we look at play.
Right.
And so just children playing in this First Steps classroom, what was the learning that we were seeing?
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So as usual, we are grateful to Sonya for educating us, and you were listening to Voices in My Head. We'll be back with more exciting people to educate us, and we'll catch you next time.
Is created and hosted by Yameer Adhar. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. We disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects that may arise from any information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guests' qualifications or credibility. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.